Welcome to Inside Straight. Before I get into explaining what that's all about, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Larry Mazza. Many of you know me. I've been around the YouTube thing for several years. I have millions of views. I've been on several shows. And what started it all is my book. I wrote a book about my life, and it was very well received. It got me with some heavyweight names in Hollywood, like Robert De Niro, for instance. He hired me on to be his consultant. I played a hitman in the movie The Irishman. I worked with Kevin Kaufman of Kaufman Productions in several documentaries, and also was a principal role in one of his TV shows called The Perfect Murder. So it's opened a lot of doors for me. But through it all, and where it all began, was that I was in the gambling business as part of the Colombo family back in the 70s and 80s. And I tell it all in my book. Again, I'll explain where you can get the book later on. But I've never stopped through the years working on handicapping and data and analytics and information and contacts and time and tedious, monotonous hours, top of hours, to come up with an edge. And even with that, it's not easy to beat that line. But I'm here to help you do it. So last year, my producer, Joe Paletto, let me say a little bit about him now. He has taken the rights to my life. He's gotten me with Terry Winter, who wrote a script for a TV series based on my book. And he was following my handicapping and my predictions for probably about 3 years now. Last year, I had such a fantastic year that he said we need to produce a show. Here we are, Inside Straight. And I want to also thank Brandon from First Pillar Productions. We're using his studio right now while he helps me build my own studio. So I'm in this for the long run, for the long haul. And the reason I'm able to do it is, as you know, most of you know, gambling is a big industry, and it is now legal in almost every state. It's legal throughout the world. People are betting on their internet. So I was able to come out of the shadows. I can now do this as a profession. I want to make sure I say this. There are never any guarantees. If anybody tells you that and tries to take your money or tries to say, send me $500 and I'll give you the winner, rip up their number. That's not what this is about. I'm going to give you the breakdown. I'm going to give you the information that I've spent hours and hours and hours on, and I'm going to keep saying that because that's what it takes. That's the number one tip to handicapping. You got to put a lot of time in. If you have a 9-to-5 job, you can't be a handicapper. If you're a fireman, a cop, a politician, a school teacher, you can't be a handicapper. Well, maybe a politician. You got plenty of time. I'm only kidding. That's a joke. I hope nobody takes that personally. But anyway, I'm going to get right into some of the weekend's games right now. And they're all complimentary at this point because this is our premiere show. Eventually, you're going to have to join the website. You're going to have to subscribe to a membership. And the benefits to that will be, the number one benefit, you will get a text, an email, or some kind of alert the minute I get hot information. And I get it. I get a lot of hot information on top of my own handicapping. And one of the key ingredients that is making me successful is when the wise guy syndicates make a play that mirrors my prediction. Those are what we're going to call our 3 gold bar standard game. Other games may be 1 gold bar. Other games I may say pass on it. But every game you will have an analysis. Doesn't mean you should bet every game. Nobody should bet every game. You'll never win. But if there's a game you're interested in, I'll have that analysis for you. You'll always be able to text us or call us. That's all being set up. And we'll answer as many as we possibly can. But every game will be touched on. I will zero in on the better games. And like I said, this weekend, you're going to get some hot information today just for watching. Down the road, you'll need to subscribe. So I'm going to start out with the FSU game. They're playing Georgia Tech. The general public remembers FSU from last year. They were very, very close to making the 14 playoff. This year, there's 12 teams that make it, which is very important to your handicapping now. But FSU lost several players to the NFL, lost a few players to the portal, because if you don't understand what the portal is, you'll never win. What happens is, I'll give you a team, for instance, like Troy State. Troy State last year had one of the best defenses in all of college football. Yes, they're not in a great conference, but their numbers were still proof of a great defense. Those players that made that a great defense spent a year or two at Troy State. Then they went into the portal and they went to Alabama. They went to Tennessee. They went to USC. They went to Ohio State. Much more exposure, much more TV. That's where the scouts are. So a lot of these teams have to replenish. And Florida State's one of them. They're going to be good. Florida State is going to be good. But this game against Georgia Tech, the odds maker has them 11.5. My numbers, and I will show you these along the way closer up. This is all the numbers that I did all week long, handicapping position by position. And when I go through it, my line comes up FSU 12. The odds maker has it 11.5. I have it 12. So to me, it's a no play on the game itself. However, the offensive numbers for Florida State only come out +7. The offensive numbers for Georgia Tech are -1.75. For me to explain how I got there, we'd have to spend a week. But those aren't big offensive numbers. So I put down on my notes under game, low-scoring game. As the week went on, and when I'm privy to watching various boards, various tickers, the wise guys hit the under in that game 3 times, meaning 3 different outfits took under the FSU game. If you were a member, you would have been, again, beeped, emailed, and got that information right away. So the wise guys went under 56, 56.5. The game went down to 55.5. People that I deal with were able to get 56. You can buy points if you need to, but we'll talk about that along the way on the show. There's times to do it, there's times not to do it. Certain numbers are worth buying, certain aren't. One quick example. If the game 6 is -6, and you're able to get it at 6.5, you don't need to buy that. 6 isn't that popular of a number. You want to be under that touchdown number, the 7. That you want to be under. So, again, we'll get into point buying down the road and different types of wages. But for me to pick the under on my numbers, and again, it's because there's no clear advantage for Florida State. Their quarterback has a good rating. Running back, not that fantastic. Again, against Georgia Tech's defense. People may not realize Georgia Tech's defense has improved. The receivers, +2, not a big deal. The offensive line only has a +1.25. Last year, if I took my records out, Florida State probably would have had a +3, maybe more, with the offensive line. So all that being said, the under is definitely a serious play. And again, the wise guy outfits followed that. I don't put any more stock in them than me or me than them. But I won't ignore them. There were times last year where, and I put it out to the people that follow me on a much smaller level. the wise guys took Army, for instance. And I said, they took it. I gave out that information. I says, but I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't see them scoring that many points to cover 13. They're not a high offensive team. They're playing another team that runs the ball, whatever it was. And the game went to overtime, and Army won by 3. So I was a winner against the pros, the wise guys. Sometimes it happens the other way. So I always pay attention to them. But a game like this, where we're both in agreement, that turns out to be a solid play. Okay. The other game that day, an opening day, there's only 2 games. So you're getting this complimentary sample. SMU is minus 27.5. That's what the odd maker says. Their number 2 running back is out. I factored that in slightly because their number 1 running back is a stud. He's going to carry the workload, and he's healthy, so it didn't sway the game that much to me. But my line, again, on my numbers, where they had 27.5, I have 17.5. And going through the numbers again, everybody remembers SMU. They had this high-scoring offense. They were fantastic. They lost some guys to the portal. They still have their quarterback. They will score points. Their defense isn't that phenomenal. So covering 27.5 points is not easy. And on top of it, 2 wise guy outfits took the underdog. They even took Nevada in game 2 next week. I didn't get to handicap that yet. It's like I said, it's very time consuming. I don't know why they bet Nevada the first week and the second week. You will know by next week because I'll do the homework and I'm going to find out why they bet Nevada 2 straight weeks. I could see why they bet them here because, again, my numbers do not show 27.5 point favorites. Florida State, I said, had a +7 offensively. Nevada, SMU has a +10 offensively. It probably will be an under game 2, and I put a note of my own, and this is my pick for you. Take the Nevada team total under. I don't see them scoring a lot of points at all. It's probably going to be, if they're 27.5 point favorites, that means SMU's total is going to probably be around 31, making, or 33, making the Nevada total probably 20.5 in that area. I'm going under, unless it's much lower than 20.5. And again, if you're online, you'll get these updates. So in that game, it looks like Nevada is definitely a live underdog. Take the 27.5 points. I've got them 17.5. The wise guys are on under. My pick was Nevada under. And here's what I'm afraid of. If SMU scores 30 points and Nevada scores 14, 30 is a lot of points. They don't cover the spread, and it doesn't go over. That's going to be a hard cover, and it's going to be hard to go over. So those first 2 games, to recap, wise guys and me and myself like under in that FSU game. That's a solid play. The second game, the underdog is a solid play. I'm leaning toward the under. If that third outfit hits it, I'll say, okay, I can't buck the system. But so far only 2 did, but I did have a note under Nevada team total. So take those 3. Everybody has to remember when they're wagering legally, of course, there's plenty of places to do that now, so I probably don't have to always mention it, but I do. You have to have a system or a bankroll, and you have to be disciplined. If you're not disciplined, don't join. If you're not disciplined, rip your phone out of the wall, rip your computer out of the wall. You'll never win. You'll have a life of misery. You got to be disciplined. So let's just say, we'll just use a number. We'll use a unit. And a unit could be anything. A unit for the great Billy Walters may have been 100,000. I don't know that for a fact. But years ago, I did take his action, along with the Kosher Boys, the Computer Whiz Kids, Mr. Pete Rose, through someone else. But he certainly wasn't a wise guy. He was just a regular, everyday gambler. But the unit has to be what you're comfortable with. Some people, it may be 1,000. So let's just say, for argument's sake, $50 bet is your size bet, or that you're comfortable with, that unit. You need to have a bankroll of between 500 and 1,000. Typically, it's 10 times the amount of your unit. I like it to be 20. So if you only have 500 to spend for football season, bet 25 a game. If you have 5,000, bet 250 a game. But again, you got to call your own units and be very, very disciplined. If you're not, like I said, none of this is going to help you because you'll overbet when the inevitable happens and the wise guys and Larry lose 3 in a row. And then you'll be short on units when we win our next 12 straight. Last year, I'm going to tell you a story, and this is why we're here today. I typically stop handicapping, especially college football, at the end of October. Because September and October, and I've been documented by judges, accountants over the years, my win percentage was ridiculously high in September and October. It started slipping in November. And what I had to learn to do over the years, and I really did it for the first time last year, was redo the handicap and redo all of these numbers. It's not as time consuming because I'm not starting from scratch, but I have to upgrade where the backup quarterback is shining. He's a star. I lowered him because, you know, the main quarterback was out, so I lowered the rating. Now I find out this guy is a stud just waiting for next year. And he's shining in his moment. So you have to adjust for that. If a receiver gets knocked out of a game, you have to adjust for that. If it's a superstar receiver, and now you see the backup, well, he's not a superstar. So I did that, and there was a Saturday that I went 13-1. I got the records of it. I can pull them out and show you guys every game. I have probably a dozen people that were, I won't call them clients because it wasn't done for money. It was done as a courtesy. But they might have bought me dinner. They might have taken care of me in a certain way to show their appreciation. But I was doing this for me. So it's very important, going back to that, to bet an amount that'll keep you in the game. Because these wise guys, all the bookmakers they've dealt with over the years, at the end of the long run, most of the bookmakers chase them, get rid of them, don't take their action, or they're in the red. The red figures means that they've lost money to these people. So you want to stay in the game. Very, very important. You have to know who's playing. You have to know who's motivated. And I've taken that into consideration these first 2 games. Motivation isn't that big of a deal in these first 2 games because it's opening day. If you're an athlete and you can't get motivated for opening day, you shouldn't be on the team. You should have been cut. You should go find another occupation. Opening day is what we used to live for when we played ball. During the season, motivation comes into play. There could be revenge. A team last year stole a game. Or got a lucky call or a bad call or what some consider a lucky break. We'll go back and forth on that forever. I've been on the right side of those. I've been on the wrong side. We're going to do a segment throughout the season, throughout the year, as long as we're doing a podcast on incredible wins and miserable losses. I've had them both. I've had them both. Everybody did. Everybody will. But you learn from those things. During the season, it's very important to know who the next opponent is. Because if I'm Alabama and I'm playing Middle Tennessee State this week, and it's game 5, the season's rolling, everybody's going through practices, it's a long season, there's a lot of work, there's ups and downs. So they're playing Middle Tennessee State, who they're a 40-point favorite over. They can very possibly be looking past that opponent because they have Georgia next week. I'll know every week where there's a donut game, where they come off a big win, play a team they should kill, and Georgia next week. Very, very important. A lot of people can't do that. They don't have the time to look at the schedule. I don't. I had to put a team together for this season. And part of my team is my wife, Kelly. She's, first of all, my tech for this podcast, under Brandon's tutelage for now. She is my agent, my manager, and now part statistician too. She's going to have to help me with this. I have other friends of mine throughout life that have jobs to do to get me that info. Let me know. We are going to be reading every college website every week. I want to know if a team like Massachusetts, who's not all over the board, they're not in the news, nobody cares about Massachusetts. So if the running back got disciplined for missing class, we're not going to know that in Florida. People in Chicago are probably not going to know that. The wise guys will. I will, because I'm going to be spending my time reading up. And the coach may just take him out for the first half. You're benched for the first half. What does that mean? That means the other team's probably a good bet, at least for the first half. We'll know that. And it takes a lot of time. Okay, so you got your college, and I'm going to be throwing things in like that always as we talk about different games. Preseason football is here. Most people say, how do you bet on preseason football? You don't know who's playing. You don't know what they're going to do. You're right. If you don't do your homework, you don't know who's playing. But if you do your homework, you research, you have people around the country that are able to tell you a certain team is taking this week very serious because they have to come up with a decision on who their starting running back's going to be. Okay? Not too often in the NFL, but it happens. And I'll give you an example. Many years ago, the Buffalo Bills had Drew Bledsoe as the quarterback. Doug Flutie was the backup. There was no question that Bledsoe was going to be the starter. But Doug Flutie wanted to start somewhere. And he was talented. He could run around. He could throw. He was very, very good. So when he came in to play in the second quarter or the second half, he lit it up. He wanted to score every time. He was playing for real. Where Drew Bledsoe, he wasn't playing for real. That was his position. Same thing goes for New England when they were great with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was going to take 0 snaps in the first game, 0 snaps in the second game. By the third game, he may play 1 series. The fourth game, when we don't have that many preseason games anymore, because there's extra games during the season, which matters. But you couldn't teach Tom Brady anything. What are you going to put him on the field for, to get hurt in a preseason game? So when you handicap those things out, and it looks like one of the games, I can see it this week, one of the games that 3 wise guy outfits took was San Francisco. The 49ers. They laid 5.5, it's up to 6.5. So you can that's still playable. We know McCaffrey's out, but it sounds like their backup running back, his name evades me for the moment. I should know him because he's a stud too. Will be getting a lot of carries. He's going to be getting game ready. they're having a problem at quarterback. So Purdy is likely to play more than most other starters. They're taking that game seriously. So that's a bet. Green Bay is another game that three wise guy outfits took. Probably the same situation there. Jordan Love, the quarterback for Green Bay, had a fantastic finale the last year, but he's still a rookie. He's still learning a little bit. We're coming down to only 2 games left. He may play more. For them to take Green Bay, he's probably going to play more. There's a reason. Another play that only 2 wise guy outfits took is over in the Miami game. Same situation there. There's a quarterback that underachieved last year. The year before, he was fantastic. So they're probably going to look to get a good half out of Tuivosa. I'm probably not saying his name right. The other game they took over 3 outfits, and the line moved a lot, is over Tennessee and New Orleans. That game, the over Tennessee-New Orleans game. If you look, you'll see that the backups are almost starters. There's probably a controversy, so both quarterbacks are going to probably show off a little bit. Unlike a team like Houston, we all know Stroud, who had a great rookie season, maybe rookie of the year, almost MVP, does not need to get hurt. Although Houston won last week, they're a talented team. Houston is a sleeper, as a matter of fact, in the NFL this year. Or not a sleeper. People are starting to see it. But, everybody's picking Kansas City. They always pick Buffalo. They always pick Baltimore. But Houston, the Jets are getting a little bit too much credit for my liking right now. I think they got to prove it on the field. But Houston, and I think Cincinnati, too, moving into the season, and we'll be talking a lot more about this next week, is probably going to make a bit of a comeback. Burrows is a very proud kid. He was injured all of last year, tried to play the season, made a comment, and I think he learned his lesson when he called Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead Stadium, and they stuck it to him. That's a learn. You learn from getting knocked down. You learn from your losses. You don't learn from victories. Mahomes has nothing to learn from winning 3 Super Bowls. Tom Brady has nothing to learn. The ones he lost is where he learned and got better. So Burrows, keep an eye on him this year too. So those are the preseason games for this weekend. I'll be back again next week with more. This morning when we went over our baseball, a couple of things rung out. Justin Verlander, perennial all-star, one of the best pitchers probably ever, has, I want to say, the second most no-hitters to Nolan Ryan. Don't bet on that and don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the case. Anyway, he comes back tonight. So Houston's been playing good. They're a hot team. They're a respected team. Fans like to bet that team. I don't think they're a good bet tonight. Verlander, coming off 2 months of an injury, is going to be on a short leash. He's a guy that likes to go 7, 8, 9 innings. That's not happening off an injury. So they're playing the Red Sox, a really good hitting team. If they could stay in the game early, and I think they will, because like I said, they're a good hitting team. The opposing pitcher is a good pitcher. The lineups match up very well. If you go player for player, we do it every day, where there's who's out of the lineup for lefty-righty switches. Their lineups are very, very equal. Houston was expected to have it. The Red Sox are a surprise, but they're doing it all year. I think the Red Sox are a live underdog, especially with the fact that Verlander won't go deep into the game. And you know what these bullpens do. They tend to blow games more than save them. The Philadelphia game, they have Aaron Nola going against Fried. Both are similar in ERA. Nola is a better pitcher in the long run. He's having a bit of a better season. The Braves are decimated with injuries. 3 of their top bats are out of the game. They won last night, and they beat a good pitcher, Wheeler. I don't think they win 2 in a row against Philly. And I do like one of my sayings, and my old partner Jimmy will tell you, they beat him yesterday, they'll beat him today. Streaks in baseball. But in baseball, every good team has a stopper that stops that losing streak. The Phillies have a couple of them, maybe 3. One of them's hurt. But Nola is definitely one of them. Their lineup is much more favorable because of the 3 injuries. They enjoy beating the Braves. There's a rivalry there. I'm leaning to Philly, and I'm never going to sit here and give you a heavy favorite, especially in baseball. Unless it's a parlay special or something like that, which we'll talk about down the road too. The Phillies have a fantastic lineup top to bottom, and with Nola on the mound, it's very close because Fried is a good pitcher. That's basically how the line is made. And going back to the previous prediction, that's why Houston is about 150 over the Red Sox, because Verlander's pitching. But again, he's not going to go that deep into the game. Red Sox are good. They're fighting for a wild card spot, and I think they're a live dog. And when you bet dogs, live dogs, you really only have to hit 1 out of 3 to stay alive. You're not going to earn. If you hit 2 out of 3, you're way ahead. If you bet favorites and lose 1 game, you got to win 2 to make it up. So even in the horses, when I'm handicapping horses, and again, I have trainers, I have the top handicappers from a few of the tracks around the country that I'm in touch with, jockeys, drivers, you name it. I very rarely bet a favorite. It's hard for me to put money on a favorite because they don't win enough. They don't win enough. You go watch for yourself. Go watch every day. 9 races, 2 favorites win. The other ones maybe co-favorites, but they don't win enough for me to put my money on favorites. So typically I put an X next to them or I'll stay off the race if I think he can't lose. So going back to baseball, you don't want to lay big numbers. The Chicago Cubs are a good bet today too. Yesterday, a few of the wise guy places took the Cubs to win the series, not the World Series, to win this series against Detroit. You can wager on that throughout the year, every series. And I did my research. All 3 pitches for Detroit had a TBA next to it, means to be determined or to be announced. They don't even know who's pitching for them. That means there's injuries. They're calling people up. The Cubs had Assad pitch yesterday. They won 3-1. Today they have Talion pitching. Excellent pitcher. And tomorrow they have Justin Steele, last year's runner-up in the Cy Young. So we played them to win the series, which means they need to win 2 out of 3, obviously. They won the first one already. I think they sweep. And what I will say is, if they should not win tonight, you could come back with them with Steele. They will win 2 out of 3. The outfits are on them. When I looked it over, I understood. Tigers are falling out of the race. It's in Chicago, who still have hopes of making one of those wild card runs. So I'm on the Cubs. The last game, but I would only take them in a parlay, and I said this before, is the Royals. They're about a 2-1 favorite, so I'm not going to tell anybody to risk 2 units to win 1. But the reason I think they're a solid bet is what I said about Verlander. Cueto, pitcher, is almost 40 years old. He's making a comeback. The Royals have a fantastic lineup. They've been hitting everybody all year long, okay? The kid Witt, who I took in many props early in the season, is lighting it up. They have this Pasquantino, who's a home run threat about, I think he leads the league outside of Aaron Judge, in RBIs. He's up there in the top 3. Their lineup is fantastic. They have a much better pitcher going than Cueto. The problem is they're 2-1. So you're not going to really stand to earn. So you can parlay them. You could throw them in a parlay with, say, the Cubs or the Red Sox or the Phillies, one of my other picks. Now if the Royals are given at 2-1, which there is no such thing, and they do win, you'll get value because you're hitting two teams. You have to have the two teams win. So those are my baseball. I'm going to give you now some props that I played myself. And again, it's complimentary for you now. There's a whole season ahead. There's all seasons. We have football now, but I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for college baskets. I'll be here for baseball. I'll be here for hockey. Hockey is a little slower in action. You don't get as many hot things, but when something happens in hockey, I mean, the percentage is awesome. They don't lose. But it doesn't come as much. And I'm not sure if it's the latest. I used to argue this. It seems to be the least Americanized sport. And when I say that, basketball, baseball, football, America just eats it all up. They love hockey now too, but years ago when I started in this, hockey was Canada's sport. Okay? They had the best teams, and there was just something about it that it didn't become real mainstream. It's getting more mainstream now with computers and information, so there will be games in hockey. I'm not telling you there won't be. We'll get soccer games occasionally. We had one the other day. I can't even pronounce it. Aurerre. Aurerre. Don't know where they are. Well, I do know because they were listed on the Spain Liga, Liga. So that's the Spanish league. So they're a Spanish team. Never heard of them. They were underdog. They won the game outright. And you got to be careful with sports outside of the country. It's so lucrative, the business of gambling and sports and everything, that it's highly monitored. It's not easy to fix games. It's not easy to put a whole team together and agree to something. It's more individualized now, where a guy can bet himself to not score 10 points in a basketball game. And it happened last year. It was the first big scandal with legalized gambling. The player had a cramp in the first quarter. He had something in his eye in the second quarter. The third quarter, he pulled his hamstring. They found out that $12 million was bet on him to score less than 10 points. That was more on that prop than any other prop that night, or any other prop in any sport. No, it just stuck out. It was a red flag. And they found out the guy did this a few times, him and his buddies. So that's going to happen. The reason I say that is soccer in other countries, I don't know how legit it is. You know, for this game to come up on a screen that I get to watch, that anybody that wants to pay a monthly subscription to Vegas can see this happening, but most people won't do it. I had to follow and play it, and I won. But again, be careful with sports in other countries. Tennis, golf, they're tough. We get some real good matchup stuff in the races, car racing, NASCAR. We get them in golf. Very, very good winning percentages. Very good. But the problem there is, like tennis, a guy can get frustrated, throw his racket up and walk off the court and quit. They do that in golf, and it causes problems. It causes problems. The player feels he got beat, but the rules state if he does that, you know. So you want to try to avoid those things. So betting soccer is very rare for me because I can't handicap Spain and Italy. I don't know who their guys are. But there are people that do it. I'm privy to them. So if I do give you a soccer game, it's because more than one wise guy alpha took it. Okay, so I'm going to give you some of my prop plays for the college football season. Well, let me hold off on that. Let me go to Kelly, because Kelly, I know you got a lot of text and you said there were some questions pertaining to the futures and things like that. So maybe we could condense it. So why don't you start with one of the questions that came in, and you know, we'll go from there.
Okay, before we do that, why don't you tell everybody where to go to the website,
InsideStraight.com. Very good. What would I do without you? www.insidestraight.com.
Where they can get your weekly selections. It will all be printed out. They can print it out. They can look at it on the screen. So where you're giving them the verbal here, they can see it on the screen and see your handicapping there.
Yes, for every game. Obviously, I can't do every game right now. I'm highlighting some games complimentary, but that's a very good point. You go on there, you'll get that Reader's Digest version of every game. You'll get, like where I said, the pros have the game 11 and a half, I have it 12. So, you know, it's a good line. If you want to play the game, go right ahead, it's your business. But that is a great point. And again, www.insidestraight.com. The most important thing is you will get beeped or emailed, you'll get an alert the second it comes in. And that's important because you'll get that real good line. You'll get that good favorable point spread. You won't have to be bothered buying points and things like that.
Right, and it's not privy to everyone. They have to join the membership. They can either do it monthly or they can do it annually, and they can cancel at any time.
Yes.
So that they can see that, and it's not open to the public.
Right.
It's just for the
Right. Yeah, because some people will join and share it, and what they're sharing on there isn't going to be the end of the world because I'll be offering some of it, you know, on these podcasts.
But they will not be getting.
They'll never be getting that alert.
Right.
And by the time, they'll never get the hot games. And there'll be other things added along the way, but those are great points. See why you're.
Okay.
I
All
keep
right.
you
Let's go to
around.
our first question.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a question here from Joe P. from California.
Hey, Joe.
Blair, you read your book. Awesome. Who will win the Heisman Trophy?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for reading my book and calling it awesome. I appreciate that. I'm always humbled when I get compliments on my book. I'll tell you a quick story. I got my hair cut this morning for the show, as you can hopefully see. And while I was in the barbershop, two guys came in. And they both read my book. And they were both so supportive and kind in the words of what a great book it was. They're asking me if I wrote a second book, which I started. It's on gambling. I started it during the pandemic, but got busy with hopefully Terry Winter and some other things. I'll throw out another thing. I got busy with Kevin Kaufman from Kaufman Productions. It looks like we're going to do a documentary on my life. So there's a lot of things that have been going on. I did the Mob TV show where I was interviewing other ex-mobsters, and I did, ex-FBI agents, ex-cops. The third season didn't come about because, again, we were hoping to be working on the TV series for the life. And by the way, that book, if you'd like to read about my life, you could get from www.larrymazza-thelife.com. So getting back to that, now thank you. You opened the door for me to talk about the book a little bit, which is perfect. I appreciate that, Joe. Okay, my Heismans. I took 4 players, all value. The favorite is Carson Beck from Georgia. He's going to be great. Georgia's quarterbacks always are. The system is great. He's got great receivers. He's got probably the #1 rated team in all of college football. But you need value. And he's going to be playing the toughest schedule, one of the toughest schedules in college football. So he's not going to have any of those second-tier teams like, I don't want to insult anybody, but like Kent State or Akron, where he could probably throw 10 touchdown passes. They're not playing them. Their competition is stiff. They're going to get in games that are defensive struggles. They're going to get into games where they want to keep the other team off the field by running the ball, okay? And they're talented enough to do that. So, as great as he is, as great as the team is, I think there's better options. The kid Gabriel, he was on Oklahoma last year. Not nearly as good as Georgia, But he went in the portal and he went to Oregon. Oregon lost a stud quarterback to the NFL. So he went to Oregon. They have talent around them. They're not in that same Pac-12 division where it was always a shootout, but they're a very offensive-minded team. And 250 on him would bring back 1,900. And I think he's got a real good shot because Oregon is going to light it up. They are in a tougher division now. They are playing the likes of Ohio State and Michigan. Well, Michigan's not going to be the same Michigan team you got used to. But I believe there's a lot of value there. 250, and that's a unit. If you want, you could bet 25 and you'd win 190. So I think he's real good. Another one I like is the kid Ewers from Texas. Highly touted. He's so good. Manning, the youngest Manning, do you remember his name, the youngest one? I think it's Art. I think it's Art Manning. But he's one of the pedigree of Mannings, great quarterbacks. He could start on almost any college team. And he's back up to Ewers. So that says a lot right there. Texas also has phenomenal weapons. They do have a tougher schedule now that they're in the SEC. They're playing competition. But they do have a couple of traditional games where he'll be able to showcase himself and light it up. So for him, 250 to win 2750. That's almost 10 to 1. So I like him a lot too. Jackson Dart of Ole Miss. You know, it's hard for me to say which one is my favorite. 250 brings you 3750. The reason I like him, Ole Miss is definitely a sleeper to win the SEC. Remember I said it. They're a long shot. Everybody's taking Georgia, Texas, Alabama, of course, Tennessee, all these other teams. Ole Miss may have done the best through the portal, and there's a reason. Their coach, Kiffin, is very offensive-minded. You mark my words, they're going to pull off some big upsets. They play Georgia. I can't wait to handicap that game. I can't wait to see the situations surrounding it, who they're playing next week and all that stuff. But if they took the field today, an opening day, I would not lay a lot of points with Georgia. Ole Miss is a force to be reckoned with. They have a monster O, fantastic receivers, and he is the real deal. So for 250, bring 3750. I'm spreading my money a little bit, but if any of them win, I'm turning a profit. My last one, and I played him last year, Jalen Daniels out of Kansas. He is as good as any one of those other quarterbacks. He throws the ball all around the field, throws an accurate pass. He's smart. He moves in the pocket. He runs. He may run for a touchdown or two every game. The problem is he's like Josh Allen. He runs so much, you're always worried about him getting hurt. And he got hurt the last 2 seasons. I'm hoping in his third year, he's educated himself enough to slide when you have to slide, throw the ball away, stop taking sacks, don't run through people, run around, all those things that you learn with age. Kansas is a super offensive team. They're in a division or conference that is very offensive-minded, and they're not defensive-minded. There's not much defense in that. Even the favorite, Oak State, who will probably win the conference, isn't known for their defense, although they are better this year. But they're not known for their defense. Kansas State, not known for their defense. You see them with a great running back all the time. So I believe Jalen Daniels, 250 to win 8,750. Again, units. $10. 25. I can't do the math right now without my calculator. But, it's a unit. But 250 brings you 8,750. So, I just think those guys, and put the favorite on the side. Last year, the favorite won. I had him. No, I take it back. The USC guy did not win. The favorite I had, the LSU quarterback, who's now the starting quarterback for the Washington Redskins, Jaden Daniels. And yeah, so I had that right last year, as a lot of my props were right. So I hope that helps you out, Joe. That's what I would do if I was you.
Okay, I have this from I have multiple questions here, but I have one asked multiple times. What day during the week are you going to drop the selections you have made for the upcoming weekend? Like Wednesday, what day will they be up on the site?
Okay. We are, as of now, and this is potentially subject to change, but I will let you know. It's a great question. I'm glad they're asking this. I am thinking Monday night, to kick off the Monday night football season, or the week. My alternative to that would be to do the Monday night game on the Friday show. I think we're going to drop them on a Friday, where you'll be able to get all those selections for the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Likely the other day, maybe Wednesday.
So you're planning to do two podcasts?
Two podcasts a week because, yes, two. I think that's going to be important because as the season progresses, we are going to have games on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Although there's only 2 or 3, those teams are showcased. They do that so they can get on TV. Some teams are never going to get on TV. That's why certain conferences, like, where Liberty is or where Appalachian State, they're never going to be on TV except when they play on Wednesday night or Tuesday night or Thursday night. So I want to be able to get those games out. So I'm thinking maybe Tuesday and Friday. Tuesday and Friday is what I think is best. Again, it could change, but for now, that's my thinking, and it's great. I'm glad they asked that.
Okay, and then what day are you anticipating having the games up on the website?
That'll be ongoing. Like the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday games will come up Tuesday morning. I'll need Monday to do those games. Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll be doing the weekend games. So, and by Friday, they'll get on Friday morning, they'll see everything for the weekend except the latest, hottest stuff.
Right.
And that's plentiful. There's a lot of those. We may get hit. We've gotten hit on Sunday where I just say, what in the world is going on with an underdog money line, a 10-point underdog money line? And when I get those type of games, I suggest you break up your unit and take half money, half points. But that's, again, we'll talk about those. But yeah, so I'll need time to work, and that'll be Monday and Tuesday. So you'll get those Tuesday through Thursday games, and then I'll be working those days to be able to get the Friday through Sunday games out. Friday through Monday Night Football.
So basically, they can go to the website every day and
Check in.
what
They'll
you've
be right.
done so far.
Right. And don't forget, there's other sports. Like, if you join next week, you're going to get daily baseball analysis, just like I gave on these games. And again, it's not only the pick, it's the analysis.
Right.
If you were looking at the baseball game I said today, Houston Astros against the Red Sox, Verlander's pitching. That's all you think you need to know? You're just going to go place a wager? You probably didn't even think for a second that he's not going to pitch that deep into the game. You want to have your money risked on Verlander when he's not going to go? Give him a couple of games when he starts going 7, 8 innings, then he's worth it. So you're going to get all of that every day. There's the NBA.
Okay.
College, when hockey starts, you got to check in every day, but you'll never miss the hottest of the hottest when you remember, because you'll get beeped.
Okay. Now we have a question from Terry from Tulsa.
Yes.
Terry, who will win the college championship? By the way, love your podcasts, interviews. So happy you have your own now.
Well, Terry, I thank you for that. Usually I get nice comments like that. It's so heartwarming. Yeah, well, I've been doing podcasts for other people, and it's always been a pleasure. Most of them, they were very, very good to me. You know, I was on Vlad TV, Valuetainment. I was on too many to mention. Seriousness and silliness, concrete, English ones, Australian ones, people from Canada. All you have to do is go to YouTube and put my name in or Google search me. And I've done numerous and have millions of views, several millions. I got 2 million each on Valuetainment and Vlad TV. So that being said, people have asked me, why don't you do your own? And the reason I didn't, I really didn't want to come out and do another mob podcast. There's plenty of them out there. Old friends of mine are doing them. You know, Mike Francesi has one. Sammy the Bull has one. Johnny A-Light has one. I could go on, you know, and not that it would be somewhat of a competition, and I didn't want to hop on the same things over and over that I've already said. So inevitably, we're going to be talking about my book and my life, because just like this, people bring it up all the time. It is interesting how I've come along to this point. So those things will be fun, but I want it to be based basically on sports. That's what brought me into this life. If you know my story, that's not 100% true. I got into the life through meeting a woman older than me who was common law wife to a heavyweight gangster named Greg Scarpa. Anyway, it's all in my book. I'm not going to go too in-depth to that now. I've said the story 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, whatever it is. So I want to focus it on the sports, which was what the one good, well, I'm not going to say that. One of the things I don't regret about being in the life is what I've learned and the contacts I've made in the gambling industry. And now that, again, it's legal, I can do this. I have a reason to sit here and talk to you every day, or twice a week. You're probably going to want to see me every day, but not yet. But anyway, okay, so the question.
College championship.
College, yeah, okay. I have, again, I'm not going to, everybody's going to say, Georgia's going to win. Like they used to say, Alabama's going to, Alabama. Yeah, those teams are always
contenders.
Yeah, contenders and favorites for people to pick. But, you know, even more than contend, they're favored. And, you know, I hate to say the same thing over and over. You don't get the value. You've got to go through a whole season, pray there's no injuries, make sure you win the games you're supposed to win, because some teams that were on the cusp didn't get in because they blew games during the season. If they didn't blow those games, and the perfect example, although they're usually in there, is Ohio State. They're undefeated at the last 2 years, 3 years, but game 12 against Michigan, they lost. And it just changed all the ramifications of who makes it to the playoffs. So I tend to, if I'm going to put my money on a team or a few teams, I want value. And here's my value predictions. In no specific, no, I'm going to put it in a specific order. The most valuable, I've spoken about them already. Ole Miss. $100 brings you $1,400. They're going to be good. They are probably going to win. I know in my under-overs, which I'm going to give them out later because I have a list with me. Even if nobody asks about them, I have that. They're going to win 10 games. And if you win 10 games in the SEC, you probably going to make the 12-team playoffs. That's why I said before it's very important. Wins are very, very important now. Well, they always were important. But you want to wind up in that top 12. Because if you're in that 12, you got a puncher's chance. If you're not in the 12, you can't be champ. You're going to go to the Amigo Bowl game or the Cocoa Puff Bowl game or whatever it is. You get my point. So anyway, I like Ole Miss for $100 to win $1,400. I like Oregon, $100 to win $700, and go back to the quarterback. He could have stayed with Oklahoma. He had a great season. He's an MVP. He's an all-star candidate. He's all of these names, Heisman. But he went to Oregon. that means a lot to me. Oregon will win 11 games this year. Remember that. Remember I said that because they can get away with losing one game and still make the top 12. They can't lose two. I don't think they can lose two because they're in a weaker division. I made the argument for Ole Miss. I think with 2 losses, and they may win 11. Those 2 teams are well worth it. Texas plus 775. That means for 100 you'll win 775. There's value there. Texas is going to be a powerhouse. They're again going to be like Mississippi. They're probably going to be 10-2. They're going to be in that discussion, and they have enough talent and a quarterback that I'm picking, yours, to win the Heisman. I can't be a hypocrite. I got to feel they're going to be in the thick of things. So at that price, I'm taking them. And the other one I'm taking, and the value isn't really that much, but it's never going to be, with Ohio State, is 100 will bring you 375. You may be able to get 4-1, 400. The reason I'm taking them, they have a great coach. They have an unbelievable talent, as always. But Michigan has taken a big hit. They lost Harbaugh. They lost their running back. They lost McCarthy, all to the pros. They lost probably 12 guys to the pros. That's why they kept beating Ohio State. This year, I think Ohio State runs the table, the biggest competition they're going to have. I believe they play Oregon. I got to double check that. That would be a game I'd be slightly concerned with, depending on where they are, who they came off of playing, who they play next week. Although those 2 teams should not be unfocused when they're playing each other. But Ohio State is probably worth it because they're going to win the conference, most likely. They're going to be in the top 12 because even if they lose to Oregon, they're still 11-1. And again, they have an easier schedule. Georgia is that beautiful pick. I'm going to watch them beat up people every week. But they've got 3 or 4 games that if they don't come with their A game, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee. I saw Tennessee, and it looked like Tennessee game might have been right before a team like Alabama or Ole Miss. So they've got a stretch. And they open up. Georgia opens up against Clemson. Clemson, they're not the Clemson you remember from the Lawrence quarterback days, but their defense is still easily top 10, okay? So on opening day, if they are just not on all cylinders, Clemson's not a give me. I'm not going to suggest that they're going to upset them until I handicap that game because it's not until actually it is 8:31. I have preliminaries here. I do have preliminaries. Georgia's minus 14, and my line is Georgia minus 16. I also have a note next to it under, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But Clemson's a capable team. So, that's the type of schedule Georgia's going to have. And again, why I wouldn't put 100 up to win 150 or whatever they're offering on that. So those are my picks for the championship. And again, they're based on value. Last year, one of my best picks, and a lot of people argue with me, was Washington to make the Final Four. And I had them in several games. I had them both games against Oregon. The kid Michael Penix, the quarterback, I loved him. I was actually hoping the 49ers would have been able to get him. I think that would have put them over the top. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. The reason I won't take Georgia is their schedule. They're probably going to win 10 games, maybe 11, maybe run the table, but it's a difficult task.
Okay, so we have several more questions, but I'm just going to randomly pick 2.
Okay.
And we'll go from there. And then we can do the rest of the questions on the following podcast.
Yes.
So this is from Sean from Florida. I'm guessing Sean from Florida used to read your My 2 Cents.
Oh.
So here's his question.
That's not a good sign.
So here's your question. Who's your pick to win the election?
Ay. Well, first of all, we're not going to typically get into politics on the show, basically because I don't want half the world hating me, no matter who I like. It doesn't matter. So my feelings don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Opinions may come out here and there, but to answer you as honestly as possible, watch Vegas. Watch the point spread on Vegas. They have it right year after year after year. And I'm going to give you a quick story. Back when Bill Clinton was running against George Bush. George Bush was a war hero. Just won Desert Storm. The whole country thought it was a lock. He was a 40-1 favorite, Bush. I got some information. You can read it in the book. Around August, just before the election, that somebody told me Bill Clinton will be the next president. And I said to myself, because I know odds, this guy's 40-1, he's a war hero. How's this nobody from Arkansas going to win? By November, it was Pick'em, and Bill Clinton was the president. So I'm not gonna try to say anything to make you pick a side, other than watch the line in Vegas. You know, I would think a month ago there was a bit of a favorite. Now as things are changing a little bit, it's probably balancing out. But watch the trends as things happen from now until November. Things will happen. There'll be debates, there'll be commercials, there'll be arguments. Things will happen that'll sway those odds. Follow Vegas. That's my answer for that. But like I said, we're going to try to keep politics out because, unfortunately, there's no happy medium anymore. There's no middle ground. So that's all I'll say about that.
Okay, so the last question for this segment. Aw. MX from Vegas. I followed your podcast with Gunner. Any conference locks?
Locks. I don't like that word. But locks are, you know, it's a word that's used too easy. Oh, they're a lock. Like they can't lose. Anything can happen. But I will give you a couple of strong conference plays that I like a lot. I will say that. And I'm going to shout out to Gunner. If anybody remembers from watching this, we did a small, I don't want to say a practice run, but we did something that Gunner was a big supporter. He said, I should be doing this. Get your podcast. You should do it. You're so good. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Anyway, I'll have him on as a guest. I'm going to have a lot of guests on along the way. I'll have trainers, drivers, some professional handicappers from different tracks. I will have, segments on horses. So this is all to come. It's all being built in, so expect that. But for my conferences, I do have a list here for them. I got so many lists, I can't get to everything. But, here's one. Liberty. Liberty is in Conference USA. They run the table almost every year because the competition isn't good in their conference. But they are good. They're a good team. They're no Georgia. They're not. They're like the UCF team from about, I want to say maybe 6-7 years ago. They were 13-0. They didn't get into the playoffs, and they weren't even ranked. Well, they might have been ranked, but not in the top few because they're UCF and they don't play a good schedule. With the 12 teams now, you could be sure Liberty will want to run the table. Because if they do, and they win a conference at 12-0, it's going to be hard to not put them in that 12-team playoff. Their coach is very good. He's very motivating. He will motivate them every week with what I just said. You guys lose one game, I personally think, let me get to that. He is going to tell them, if you lose one game, you will not be in the playoffs. So every single week, they are going to be motivated to win. Their under-over is 10.5. I took over 10.5 wins because I believe they're going to run the table. I believe they're going to run the table and win 12 games. That gives me one loss. If they lose one, They probably won't make the playoffs, but their coach won't let them think that. One loss, because he'll say, look, Georgia has a loss. Look, this team has a loss. Look, this team has a loss. Let's be 11-1. So I believe they'll be 12-0. That went, or 11-1. Either one wins the conference. And they weren't. When I played my units, I got minus 160. So I had to lay 160 to win 100, so to speak. They're up to about 2-1 now. And no wise guy played it. It's my game, but it does show me it's smart money is going on that. I would say Liberty wins their conference for sure, and they win over 10.5 games. The second one I have, this is a real value shot, is Fresno State to win the Mountain West. That means they got to beat, I believe it's Boise, and one other good team, maybe Air Force. They're a very good team, very good. And those other two teams are not, they're not going to, end the war. They're good teams, but they're typically favored because of the public. People like Boise, they like Air Force. But I think Fresno State has a real good shot at winning the Mountain West. You all know how I feel about Ole Miss. They're going to be a long shot against Georgia, Alabama. I put a small unit on them to possibly upset them and Texas because they'll both be good prices. And again, a small unit. You're not going to bet half your bankroll because you're getting big odds. That's the key. I've got an honorable mention, and it's Oregon, because I've got Oregon and Ohio State neck and neck, and they're going to play each other. It's going to be a big game. I don't think the loser gets kicked out, but the winner certainly makes it. And Oregon, if they do beat Ohio State, they could win the conference. So they're a good, and, much more value than Ohio State. So that's it for that. There's no more questions you said?
Well, we have several more, but
Yeah.
We'll save those for the follow-on.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay. Yeah, we've been on. Okay, but I'm just going to a list I want to give. I also handicapped, and most people again don't have the time. If you bet a team to win over X amount of games, to win that many games, you have to go through the schedule. How many of you go through the schedule for every team and see when they will be favored, where they're on the road? I do it. I just finished. I wish I could have finished last week. This show would have been on last week. I've got Virginia Tech winning over 8 games. Okay, and again, I matched every game. What I do is I see the games that, to me, I think are wins, where they'll be favored, they should win, they probably will win. They're probably at home in those games. So, for instance, I probably had 6 of those. So I got 6 wins. Now I look at the list and I say, okay, they're going into Georgia. You got to give them a loss. 6-1. They're going into Alabama. 6-2. That leaves 4 question mark games. All I need is 2 of those games to win, to, in this case, push. But normally, in that scenario, if I win half of my question marks, the game will go over. And I have an asterisk next to that. So I'm thinking it's more like 7-2 with 3 games as question marks, because I have my star, which is a gold bar. Inside straight, we don't have a star system. We don't have a play of the year system. It goes by gold bars. If I tell you it's a gold bar prediction or a 3 gold bar prediction, that's how you can rate our plays. I got over 8 games, Oak State. Same thing. I got a gold bar next to them. Same scenario. I went through it. Oak State will probably win their conference. They'll probably be in that talk for the playoffs. If they don't win over 8 games, I'd be shocked. I already mentioned Liberty over 10.5. I mentioned Oregon over 10.5. Arkansas is a great program, great team for years. They lost a ton to the portal. They lost to people graduating. Their schedule is brutal. I got them winning under 5.5 games. Now, it sounds under 4.5 games. It sounds like, they'll win 5 games. That means they got to be 5-7. That's very close to 500. It's 1 game off of 500. I don't see that. They're playing in Alabama. They're playing in Georgia. They're playing at Tennessee. They're playing Texas. I don't even care where they're playing Texas. They could play Texas in my backyard, they're not beating them. You know, there's a lot of games that they're just not going to win. So I got them under 4.5, and it's strictly because of the schedule. They're usually a decent team. Appalachian State, I see them like Liberty. They're in a conference. If they go 12-0, they've got an argument. So their coach and that team is on a mission to run the table. And in their conference, it's not out of the realm of possibility. They can do it, okay? So I'm seeing 11-1, 12-0 for them, okay? And again, like I said before about UCF, 13-0, and they didn't make it back then with 4 teams. They'll make it. They have to win over 8.5 games. I got them winning 11-12. App State. Okay. Under 3 Vanderbilt. If they win 4 games, I'll retire. That's dangerous. I may be looking for a job soon. No, they have a tough schedule. As a matter of fact, I shopped around. The true under-over is 2.5. I found a 3 and took that. That means they have to win 4 games for me to lose. If they win 3, I push. I don't think they'll win 1 or 2 games, in my eyes. Under 4.5 Virginia. Over 7.5 Arizona. This was one of my losers last year. I got under 5.5 Colorado. Last year, the Deion Sanders thing was blown out of proportion. I said they wouldn't win more than 3.5 games. Okay? They won their first 4 games. They won their first 4 games, but you ready for this? They lost their next 8. So as wrong as I wasn't that wrong. I mean, I lost it quick. So now they're upgraded to 5.5 wins. I don't see it happening because they're not going to sneak up on anybody. Deion Sanders, the quarterback's a good kid. Maybe in another year he'll be a Heisman guy. But I just think Colorado is going to be brought back down to earth. Again, I put over 10.5 Ohio State. We spoke about that. It's the game against Oregon. That could be their one loss. If they don't fall asleep the rest of the year, that's going to be their only loss. You know, and like, why not? The last 2 years, they were 11-0 until they fought Michigan. Then they lost. So this year, they shouldn't be 11-0. They likely will be. And my last one is under 3.5 Akron, because you could just beat up on that team every year. I've been betting them under for the last 5 or 6 years. They're not a, what's the word? They're not a culture. They're not a good college football culture. Nobody wants to go to Akron. And if somebody goes to Akron and they're real good, they're in the portal the next day. The next season, they're playing for Cincinnati. And then if they're good, they're playing for Ohio State. It's become more like the NFL. They can move from place to place. Years ago, you signed a scholarship. You couldn't leave. You can't just say, I'm going to go play for Maryland instead. You couldn't do that. Now you can, so Akron is always going to be up against it. So that's my list for that. In closing, folks, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I look forward to coming back. I want you to know this was done live. We're not going to be doing editing or anything like that. Brandon from First Pillar Productions has run it. He's training my lovely wife and tech, Kelly, on the job. I have no teleprompters. I don't need them. And no script, of course. I just have my notes, which I could never remember all these numbers. Remember, down the road, we'll have a segment on ultimate fighting, boxing. We have some experts for UFC that have everybody in the red, so we'll be bringing that to you. And don't forget horses. The horses we'll typically only do on Saturdays, because if you're a true gambler, no. If you want to be a winner, a true gambler bets horses every day. I only play the horses on Saturday. And the best horses run, the highest purses, you're getting the truest effort out of everybody, and pretty true to form. And some of the information I get seems to be best on that day. So keep that in mind. You'll be getting those. And you may be getting an alert on a horse, a hot horse that came in, a first-time starter. So once again, I thank you. And go to YouTube, not only for this show, Inside Straight, but go to my YouTube or put my name in, Larry Mazza. And something you'll see, we have Brandon, who I mentioned a few times already, for my book. He filmed a video with the audio of Carlos Carr's song. Some of you know it, but if you don't, it's a great song, and it's called A Life. And check out the video. It's phenomenal. I get compliments on that 5 years later. So thank you, and until next time, be a winner.